Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Steven.
And I'm Clay.
And we are the Hilsmaniacs. And today we're going to be reviewing the highest grossing movie of all time, Avengers Endgame. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we are going to be watching every movie that's on the highest grossing list, and then watching and reviewing each one of them. And then after we get through the first 10, we're going to then do a ranking of them based on where we think they belong, and then we'll do the next 10, things like that.
So just so we're all clear, this does not count for inflation. So,
yeah.
Because if you counted for inflation, Avengers Endgame isn't the highest grossing film of all time. So we're just going with the average, the basic, highest grossing list.
I enjoyed the movie. I already kind of discussed this when I did my ranking all the movies of the MCU. Go check those out. I did them in the 3 phases and things. But all in all, though, I thought it was a good culmination to the Infinity Saga, essentially, of the MCU. A lot of people, it depends on if you like superheroes or not, whether you enjoy this movie. But I enjoyed it. It was a good close. What did you think, Clay?
Avengers Endgame, for what it was a really good movie. I personally liked Infinity War better, but Endgame was still a great way to kind of end this Thanos chapter, if you will, of the MCU. And unfortunately, there's spoilers. Some people die, and it has a sad ending, but everything has to come to an end at some point. And so, but overall, it is definitely, I think, my second favorite in the MCU, right after Infinity War. So I personally feel like it should have been the highest grossing film the first time it came out.
Yeah,
they shouldn't have had to re-release it to make it the highest grossing film of all time, but they did. They re-released it, which got it above the second highest grossing film, which we'll talk about next time. But Endgame was just, it means something different for everybody. But to see all the heroes, that we've pretty much followed since, 2008?
2008,
I think, when Iron Man came out.
Well,
so
11 years, I guess.
So, it was just great. And yes, we did lose some, but that's what happened.
What I liked about it too is that it left us with even more going forward. It left us with what's going to happen next, what heroes are going to make it into the next phase, and things like that.
Yeah, because we've seen, we saw Thor go with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Captain America kind of went his own. He's old now, and so it's and Hulk. If you haven't seen the movie, spoiler: Hulk snaps his fingers with the gauntlet. But so Hulk is taken out of action now because the gauntlet messes up your arm when you snap with all the stones. So Hulk's gone. Thor's with the Guardians. Captain America's kind of gone. So it just kind of and they use the quantum realm, which I personally didn't care for anyways. This whole time travel thing, but it begs the question: what else will they do with the quantum realm going forward? Because we have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming up. We have the WandaVision stuff coming up. Is any of that gonna play into the quantum realm? What do you think they're gonna do? Do you think they'll use it?
I think
later on.
There were multiple ways going in that they could have done. They could have brought everybody back. Maybe they were snapped to a different alternate reality or something along those lines. They could have explored realities instead of time. But now, knowing what's coming ahead next, with WandaVision is going to be messing with, there's going to be multiverses created and all this other stuff, and branching timelines in the Loki series and things like that. There's going to be a lot of different things coming up. But I did like that they used the quantum realm and didn't just have them I can time travel now. Kind of like in X-Men Days of Future Past, where one of them just had the ability to project somebody back in time all of a sudden. But like we never saw that on screen. But this one at least had like a meaning and an explanation, and it kind of tried to use science to explain how they're doing it
It
too.
didn't
Like
work.
even if you didn't understand any of the science stuff, he didn't understand the time travel stuff that
I
much.
never
But
have, and I think that's my one downfall with this movie is that I didn't like the time travel aspect of this.
most people
And
didn't.
I think the
But
reason I didn't like this was because every other time travel thing I've seen, there were strict rules, and this went completely opposite of what we all know about time travel from other movies. So, it was really confusing for me how they were able, and using the quantum realm to do it didn't really make any sense because the quantum realm doesn't necessarily have to do with time, so it's
and I get that because in like the two Ant-Man films, we hadn't really seen much. Like they went into the quantum realm, but we didn't really learn exactly what that was and how it works until really Endgame when they were able to use it to travel through time. But other than that, it's still like a mystery.
well, and it
Um,
contradicted what it said in one of the Ant-Mans because they said in the quantum realm there's no concept of space or time. Well, if there's no concept of time, how can you go back in time if there was never a time to begin with?
I don't know. Let us know down in the comments section what you think of the quantum realm being used. If you understood the time travel stuff in Avengers Endgame.
And believe me, I'm not trying to diss on Endgame at all because I really enjoyed Endgame. I've seen it about 4 times
Me too.
at
Yeah. I
least.
mean,
And it is my second favorite film in the entire MCU, right after Infinity War. I mean, it would probably be better had the battle scene been almost like the one from Infinity War, where they're in Wakanda. But I mean, that scene was just the best I think of Infinity War, and that's what puts Infinity War above this. But as the highest grossing film of all time, I personally think it should have been the first time it came out
I
instead
mean
of
that's true. I mean, there's no
yeah.
almost nothing can compete with what they did in
Right.
this movie. I know like DC has tried with their Justice League and
I
everything
mean, even
else.
Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Episode
Yeah.
9, it kind of tried the same thing where it had the final battle with the big villain and all the original, people came back and it was all this
There was a big scene where there's
yeah.
one ship and
And
then
then
there's
all of a
100
sudden there's
ships.
a
It was
yeah.
just
So
yeah.
it was I mean everybody's trying to copy this and the fact that um we know what the previous highest grossing film of all time was and nothing beat that somehow. This definitely deserved it. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
Endgame was a great movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Because it's been out since what 2019.
Well, obviously you'd have to
2018?
see the whole MCU first before you
Right,
see this one because it
but
wouldn't really make
definitely
much
definitely
sense.
check out Avengers Endgame.
If I were to rank this movie, or if I were to like give it a star amount or whatever, I'd give it like I'd say almost 5 out of 5, maybe a high 4.5 out of 5, something like that. I mean, or 9 out of 10, however you want to
I
rank
mean,
it.
yeah,
But
if I'm going with the star thing because of the confusing time travel for me, it would be a 4.5 out of 5. That's the only thing I didn't like.
I mean, the only thing really
So,
that would keep it from like a perfect like 5 out of 5 movie, there were some instances where it looked like in the battle scene. I mean, there's a lot going on, so they probably missed some things. But there were some things that were like out of order, like you could kind of tell that they
right,
were recorded beforehand and then filled in, and it
right.
looked like there was someone in the background of one of them that a
That
second later
wasn't
they're
in
not there,
the
and then they're
yeah.
back there again. So it's like,
Or like
but
I think
that's
there was a scene where like we saw a giant Ant Man in the
oh yeah,
corner
there's
of
that
one
too.
scene, and then he's normal size Scott Lang in the next scene where they see it.
Yeah.
So it's like how'd he get from there to there and shrink that fast and but you know
But I do like that they used like Endgame really worked well because it took all the stories that we knew and it culminated like every
yes
story, like every character arc from the whole MCU by putting them all together. It gave them all sort of all a close to their story
right
while also opening new doors for the people that are going into the next phase of the like some died, some are probably they're probably going to have like a one-off. They're going to appear
right
in some like maybe the Hulk probably won't be in the next one because he's going to be part of the She-Hulk series, so maybe that's sort of like a passing of the torch thing. It looks like Thor is going to be giving up his powers to Jane Foster, so maybe either he sticks with the Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever. But a lot has changed since Endgame. Like, we know it's been over a year now since that came out.
Right.
2 years? 1 year. 2019 it came out.
Yeah. I think.
And just knowing what's coming going forward, it still did a good job, though, like I said, of closing out everyone's. Like, it's almost like in professional wrestling when there's like a big rivalry that's going on,
Right.
and then they have that one final match where they just beat
They
each
just
other up
close
for a half
everything,
an hour,
yep.
and it closes off their story in a big way, if done right. And that's what storytelling should be. You know,
Right.
like every character, that even when they come together, there's still those individual intertwining stories in there that connect together as
Right.
well, and then it all culminates with that one final battle, just like any other adventure movie.
And that's what the entire, not just Endgame, but the entire MCU was able to do. You know, since Iron Man's release in 2008, they've had some sort of plan going forward of what the next film would be or how it would connect with the previous film. And then you get Avengers, and it's like, okay, this is awesome. And then Age of Ultron, and you got even more heroes. You know, and then Infinity War, and you had even more heroes because of the stuff that happened between the two films. You know, and then Endgame brought everyone together that you've seen, even people that you might not have remembered that you've seen. You know, there were cameos in there during the battle scene that I missed, and I've seen it 4 times. So, you know, and that's the one thing that I think, and I think that's why everybody likes this film so much, is because it was able to do that. And it was able to take these characters that, like, originally may not have been such a big deal in the MCU. You know, like the Guardians. They might not have been your favorite characters. But come this movie, you realize that they're kind of important, you know.
Right.
Because their story connects mostly to Thanos more than anybody else's does. You know, with Gamora being Thanos' quote-unquote daughter. So it plays on to the Guardians of the Galaxy more than it does anybody else, and that's the great part about Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, they found a way to like mesh everything together perfectly, like we said, with their stories and all the characters. And the only thing though that makes this movie sort of like, if you see it without seeing any other of the other Marvel movies before it, within the MCU, then it doesn't really make sense, and it's not as epic or exciting as it is if you've seen every other movie before it.
Right.
So as an individual movie on its own, maybe it doesn't necessarily, like, if people had all seen it without seeing any of those other movies, it might not have been the highest grossing movie of all time.
Right.
And that's the thing about talking about this, where it's part of a series versus talking about, like, the next movie we'll be talking about is Avatar. That's the second highest grossing movie, but that's like at least right now that's a standalone movie. I think they're making more, I'm not sure,
well,
within that world or
yes.
something, but that's the difference between comparing this and that, is that Avatar is its own movie. You see it once or twice.
Right.
There's nothing else before it to see, so in people's opinions it would be like an epic movie or whatever, you know, or an adventure or whatever. But with this as a series, though, like, you have to see all the other pieces of this puzzle before you see the final product. That's the only thing that, like, doesn't work about it. But other than that, it's like an almost flawless movie, and it did great with the storytelling and character development and everything else. So we would recommend it if you were to see
definitely.
it, but we definitely recommend seeing all the other MCU, the 21 films before that,
Yeah,
I think it
there's
was.
21
That was the
or 22.
22nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, after that was Spider-Man Far
Right.
From Home, which was technically the culmination of
The end of
the Infinity Saga.
everything,
It was
yeah.
like the results of Endgame. And it gave us all the characters that we wanted. You know, throughout the MCU, they had their solo movies and then their team-up movies, and now everyone came together and things like that. And it was some of the most iconic superheroes. I don't know if DC has more iconic here. Like, I don't know how well the comics do compared to like DC's. Like, I don't really get into DC movies that much, but just these characters were like big time characters from the comics, especially Spider-Man. So having him, like you said, with them and everything made it even better.
And I think one last thing that I really enjoyed about Endgame was the fact that they were able to have this 5-year gap in the movie.
Oh yeah, that
between too. Because it starts off directly after Thanos' snap in Infinity War, or pretty close to. It's like what 8 months after it or something.
No, I think
like
it might have been I think it was like 20 days or something.
Or what?
Maybe
Yeah,
like
it might not have even been. Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
So it was like almost immediately right after Thanos snapped his fingers in Infinity War, and everybody got dusted, and all this stuff happened, and they go and they track down Thanos, and then they realize that the stones are gone, so they need a plan. Either that or everybody's gone forever, and it takes them 5 years, but they figure out, thanks to the help of Scott Lang, to use the quantum realm to bring everybody back. And that 5-year period, like, we get to see what happened. We've seen people grow up. Because I think we saw Cassie Lang, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
right?
Pretty much.
Where she
older than she was. Yeah.
Because it's been that 5-year period, so she's closer to an adult now. And the world itself, like, I think it showed, was it New York or whatever?
Just all these different places,
and
how they're adjusting.
It's just dark, and there's just dust and dirt everywhere because people,
Yeah, I mean, we saw, at least at the
much,
end of Infinity War, there was like a helicopter that crashed because the pilot disappeared, planes were crashing, stuff like that. Yeah, we got to see these effects and like the real world implications outside of just the Avengers' lives.
Right, because it affected everybody. And we knew it was going to happen when Thanos snapped his fingers, that it would affect everybody, but we weren't sure that we would see this extent of it.
Yeah, so I'm glad they got to include that.
Right, and I also like that it kind of followed up on things that we were curious with from Infinity War, like what happened to Hawkeye. Because the movie starts off and shows where Hawkeye is, and it starts off, I believe, with the snap, and his family gets snapped away, so then Hawkeye's on his own, and so it answers those questions, like, because Hawkeye wasn't in Infinity War, so like, where was he? What was he doing? What happened during the snap? And that's where Endgame is able to pick that up and kind of go from there. And the title suits it, because this was the end game for the MCU. I mean, they had Spider-Man, but this overall, for the Avengers at least, this was, or at least the original Avengers, this was the end game.
And for me, it makes me wonder, like, are they going to be able to top this someday? Whatever the next Avengers movie is, whenever it happens, it's probably not happening in Phase 4 coming up, but maybe after that in Phase 5 or something, there's going to be it's going to look different because there's all new characters that we're getting introduced to with these Disney Plus series.
X-Men and Fantastic Four.
Plus the X-Men, I just was curious if they're going to be able to top their own movie as highest grossing movie of all time.
Right.
Will something else beat this before that time? Like, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to the future of the MCU.
Yes.
I'm sure all of you are as well. So let us know down in the comments as well what you thought of Avengers Endgame. Do you think it deserved to be highest grossing movie of all time? Either the first time around when they brought it out, or when they brought it out again to try and get that record?
I'm okay with them re-releasing stuff. Because if it deserves it, do it.
Yeah.
But it still should have made it the first time. That's just how I feel. But it was a great film. If you haven't seen it, check out the rest of the MCU, if you haven't seen any of those. And if you have, go watch Endgame, because it is very much worth it. Yes, it's almost 3 hours, or over 3 hours.
Yeah, it was over 3 hours, but it is worth the time.
But it is worth it. And there is no end credit scene, so you don't have to watch after the credits. But it is a great film. So stay tuned for next time when we talk about the second highest grossing film of all time, Avatar.
Subscribe.